We just heard Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Ron Suskind defend his new book, Confidence Men, that alleges President Obama presided over an administration that unfairly treated women in the White House and failed to provide proper leadership during the financial crisis. My next guest is also a veteran journalist who's written a book on the early days of the Obama White House. Joining me now, MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, columnist for Bloomberg View, and the author of The Promise, President Obama, Year One.
Hi, Martin.
Good afternoon, or good evening even. Before I get to your thoughts on Ron Suskind's book, you have, I understand it, managed to get some kind of a response from the White House in relation to this book?
All that I've heard is that the word got passed down to the staff, don't turn on each other over this book. We don't have time to waste, pointing fingers at who was the source of this or that. I mean, a lot of the sources are long gone from the White House, but the president didn't want time wasted on recriminations over this book.
Of course, many of those sources are still there. You just watched that interview with Mr. Suskind. What's your reaction?
Well, I don't agree with Ron that any time you pull back the curtain, everybody says this is untrue. I mean, I pulled back the curtain in my book. A number of people didn't like it. Larry Summers hated the book and wouldn't talk to me for a year and a half. Christy Romer did not like the book at all, and there were others. But there wasn't one person who came forward to say, either publicly or privately to me, that I'd gotten things wrong.
Or indeed, nobody suggested that it was fiction or a distortion.
Right. So I just think, and that's true of other authors as well. I'm not the only one. So this notion that, it somehow proves that it's a good book if people are saying that parts of it are not true, I don't think holds water.
He implied in that interview that he'd literally spoken to everyone in the administration's economics team. Is that true? No,
actually it's not. And in the last few days I have heard from several people I talked to in the economic team. One of them I think I can mention, Austin Goolsbee, cooperated a lot with me, became chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
Somewhat significant position.
He didn't talk to Ron. So, we've all got our takes on this. The problem is, to me, is not these kind of methodological questions. It's silly for me to get into some sort of
row with another author.
Right.
I get that.
People can make their own judgments when they read the books, but it's a question of the larger take and whether the evidence is there for that. So is the evidence there that this was not just a boys' club, which I reported in my book, and that they had this dinner, and I outlined who was at the dinner.
I read that story in The Promise, and I assumed that Ron Suskind had actually taken it from your book.
Well, he re-reported it, which is fine, but there's a distinction between something being a boys' club and being a hostile work environment.
And a misogynistic one.
And, basically, the White House is like this newsroom or a lot of tough companies where it's tough up there. But the point is, Larry Summers and Rahm Emanuel treated men and women in very harsh ways. But there was not a distinction between them where somehow these guys were horrible misogynists and engaged in creating a hostile work environment. Now, the response to that might be, well, she said it, Anita Dunn said it, But just because one person in a kind of a gotcha situation, may have said something doesn't make it true. And the role of the author is to sort through all the many different things that sources say on the record and off to try to paint a true picture. Something can be an accurate quote, but not an accurate reflection. And we all know that when it's reported in the wider world, people just get the shorthand. Most people aren't reading these books, right? So all they get is Barack Obama, sexist White House. That's not fair, and it's not true. So we have to take some responsibility of the impressions, the larger impressions that we convey from our reporting. I think that's also true of him as a decision maker. Now, this idea that, they were home alone because the president was so much worse than Clinton. That's not what I found in my reporting. I talked to a number of people who had interviewed both Clinton. They worked for both Clinton and Obama. They preferred Clinton on some things, but they preferred Obama as a decisive leader in a time of crisis. So to depict him as somehow not decisive in a time of crisis is just not accurate.
Columnist for the Bloomberg View, Jonathan Alter, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Martin.